specifically as it relates to violence and gun violence, as Chicago has become the epicenter for the conversation on what is going on in our urban communities. So we are really thoughtful about this tonight, and as we are generally, most importantly because we think it's most important to think about this as not just something that's happening or something that's endemic to African American communities, but most importantly something that's a symptom of what's happening to African Americans in the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, and the United States of America. So I am very, very excited about our panel tonight. I'm very, very grateful to Dometi Pongo for putting this podcast series together, and Sabrina Gregg on our staff. This has been very important in terms of outreach and getting conversation going. And it's important that we continue to do it. So as Dometi told me, this is the 7th of eight that we're going to do. Hopefully this will be the 7th of many, many more as we continue this conversation all over the city. And I have to tell you that it's been seen in more than just Chicago. So I just want to make sure that you understand that this is very important to us. And so I will get off the stage of this event, and I just want to welcome our panelists and thank them in advance for engaging in this discussion. As you know, Dometi Pongo, you know Kofi Ademola, Dr. Obare Adeye Cartman from the clinical and community psychologist. Teme Mwale, fire effector of the Forefront Project, I hope I got that correct. Tree, an activist affected by gun violence. And Jessica F.M. Supreme Disu, who has done a number of different things with us, and we're so proud and happy to have her here tonight. And happy to have all of you. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, I know in Chicago, black men make up, most of the population in the county jail, and also in the state prison facilities. And it's been like that forever, as far as I remember or can recall. Me personally, working with youth, they do live a very unique lived experience than most. But it's constantly like a mainstream culture or mainstream voices talking to these people who live a unique experience, and they can't really speak to like what they are going through. For example, we have one boy in our boys program that has a hit on his head, and people don't know how to deal with that. like what do you tell? Do you tell him not to arm himself, to not protect his life? Or where do you send him? What's the answer to dealing with youth that are walking around with basically hits on their heads? And this kind of culture hasn't been talked about. So we have a breakdown in like street organizations where folks who organized on behalf of the community and against like police brutality back years ago. So we're talking about what they would call gangs, street organizations that also like work alongside like a lot of historic civil rights activists. Like a lot of people didn't know, like Martin Luther King worked hand in hand with like the vice lords when he was like organizing in North Lawndale. And so what we see is like these community groups have often been criminalized and arrested and like flooded into like the prison facilities. You see a breakdown in that culture. And so that culture of like black men organizing and black men out here trying to provide needs for the community, they took the leaders out and they took structure. And so now we have like a lot of young people who are basically like almost like renegades in a sense, in which they are defending themselves and their friends, especially if they have broken homes in the family. And so having broken homes is not like it's not totally like the responsibility of those who live in the household, but it's a responsibility on like society. It points to like the inequality in Chicago, the lack of jobs, the lack of quality paying jobs, the education system, so many different things. And I think the youth are experiencing all of like Chicago's ills, are like manifesting in how they behave daily. So you talk about a public school system that is like, has been failing. You talk about how easy it is to get guns. It's easier to get a gun than a degree in this country. So just think about that. But the states that surround Chicago, you could easily, like, guns flood from there. There are like lax gun laws and all the states surrounding Chicago. They also have a lack of real conversation. Like, they're not even thought about when it comes to like conversations like this one. I've been to like public safety meetings in which I always laugh at public safety meetings because they never include the people that are causing the harm. Like, how you gonna have a public safety meeting and you gonna have no shooter at the table? So you're talking, in essence, you're talking in an abstract about violence. You're talking about a lifestyle and a lived experience you know nothing of, but you think you do because you just read something and then you see on the news and you can state a statistic. But it's different when you know, like across the street, who has guns and who don't, or the areas in which, or how to access and get weapons. And so there are many experiences in which I saw and I know of activists who have been involved directly with gun violence. There was I think she was 11, a member of Asada's daughters, her name is Takaya Holmes. She was killed around Parkway Gardens from a bullet that wasn't really intended for her. The boy that was shooting was aiming at some guys across the street that were going to kill him if they saw him. So in his defense, he shot and missed and killed Takaya. And that's a reality. The question is, how do you break that
vicious cycle?
Yeah, that cycle and that relationship with violence. Like, I can't tell you not to defend yourself.
Yeah. When
you have people coming after you. But at the same time, you arming yourself and you carrying out that action is harming others and causing funerals. So
I myself was a victim of violence. I was shot in 2012, and the first year I was like, it was a weird experience for me because I had never been shot before. So like the feeling of somebody being able to take my life whenever they wanted, and me just feeling helpless made me get really angry and just like, I don't know, I just really wanted blood though. Like, I really wanted some sort of justice for what had happened to me. So as I sat there, like the first week in the hospital, I had to lay on my back for a week straight because they couldn't really lift me up or anything. So it's like, I felt like I was in a casket because everybody was coming like leaning over my bed. And I was just real mad, and it's like I had friends coming like, we gonna kill them niggas, we finna go, you know, because they knew who it was. It was people that they were enemies, it was their enemies. Like, I had accumulated enemies by being friends with people that had enemies. So I myself particularly wasn't doing anything, but how the streets go, like, if you with them, we don't care. We saw you over there, we can't get them, we gonna get to you. So I wanted revenge at first. Like, I wanted like blood. It was real dark. Like, I didn't really understand, because before that happened to me, I would, like, when I hear about, like, all my friends that I lost after I got in the wheelchair. So before that, I just would hear about other people getting killed, and I would just think like, man, why would somebody go kill somebody? And then like some people was like, oh, he got shot. He went and killed the dude that shot him, or he got shot at. And I still didn't really understand, like, what would drive a person to go try to harm somebody just because they got hurt, until it happened to me. Like, it's a real dark thing that floats over you and like whispers in your ear, like, yeah, like they tried to kill you. Like, I was afraid to go outside. That was making me mad. Like, the fear also was making me mad. So like, if I just kill these people, I don't have to fear them no more. They're not here. So for like a week, I really just thought out revenge plots and things like that. And then, but at the same time, I always had sense. So it's like, my friends would come like, we gonna kill him? I'm like, no, I'm alive, bro. Don't do nothing, because if y'all go shoot at them, they're gonna know what it's about. And this is gonna be an ongoing war. I'm alive, safe, but one of y'all might lose y'all life trying to avenge me for getting shot. So I feel like one major thing that we need is like trauma support for people that been shot. Like somebody to keep following up with them and seeing where they head at, because it's either gonna go two ways. You're either gonna get shot, get a gun, and become a shooter, or get shot and just be paranoid and be fearful of your life all the time you walk on the streets unless you get some help. Because I started carrying a gun after I got shot. I never even carried, I carried a gun a few times before that, but it was to impress the people I was friends with. Like, oh yeah, look, I got a gun. But I didn't really feel like I needed one. But after I got shot, I started carrying a gun. But it put me in positions that were more scary than the one I was in myself, because I found myself drawing that gun on random innocent people whenever I was frightened.
Right.
So I'm like, bro, you traumatized. You like, you got some traumatic.
Right.
You got some post-traumatic stress, brother. Like, and I didn't even know. Like, when I came home, cause I got shot like over the 4th of July weekend, so I didn't get to see none of the fireworks. One of my friends tried to show me the fireworks that he recorded. When I'm hearing them, it triggered something. I was like I ain't like loud noises. I ain't like being surrounded by people. Like I get claustrophobic. Like weird things was happening to me that I didn't know what it was. I had to deal with all on my own. Like I had counselors at my high school when I was in school, but I didn't really utilize them because I was really depressed. I wanted to kill myself. I tried killing myself. And after I graduated, I just had to get through all of it by myself. And I'm here now. I'm good. You feel me? I'm good, everybody, by the way. I'm good. But it's just going through that. Now I see what it is. Now I see from a different lens what's going on with these people. Like, I see why somebody could get shot and think like, oh, I'm Rambo now. I just survived the shooting. Now I gotta go on the shooting spree and they not gonna take me alive type of, it's like the feeling of if you don't have an outlet or anybody to come to, we gonna have what we have now.
Saying that an idle mind is a playground for the devil. And so it's important that we not only are engaging, victims of violence, but also, perpetrators of violence, engaging them with opportunities, access to resources. I think that, with the unemployment rate in Chicago, in Illinois being I think it's the highest Black unemployment rate in the nation. I think like 12.7% of the people are either not working or working very small paying jobs, whereas folks had to move to Indiana or out of state. And so employment is key. I think, you have brothers just, hanging out, not really having no goals, not in school, not engaged in community programs. Of course, they're more likely to, just whatever, and peace. So, when I got into peace work 5 years ago, actually, it was Heaven Sutton. She was killed on the West Side, 7 years old, straight bullet. And I remember working with some of my mentees at a day camp, and we were talking about, Heaven's murder and just like the murders of young people in Chicago being killed. And they kind of felt numb to it. They felt like, it's, it happens. I'm like, it happens, but do it have to happen? And so asking those questions, and I'm like, well, how can we, we talk about peace and nonviolence, and, peace isn't cool. That's not something, you hit me, I'm gonna get my lick back, or you shoot me, I'm gonna shoot back, or, these are natural, I guess, thoughts that come up. And so, getting on the journey, I started going to different workshops, visiting, learning about like the pervasiveness of violence against women, being, domestic violence being one of the top form of violence in our communities, in our world, period, I think. And from taking different workshops to, learning from different practitioners, going to different, countries to like Thailand, learning mindfulness and meditation, seeing how, Buddhist monks practice peace building, and how can we bring some of that back to Chicago. And we've done, workshops around that. Obviously there still is a cultural disconnect, but I think that, peace is a process, it's a discipline, and it must be taught, and we have to teach it in the schools. You have to meet young people where they are, and also in the juvenile detention programs, right? And so that's kind of been like my journey and assessing it. I know that we need programs. and we all know that here, and not just programs reaching victims of violence, we have to reach perpetrators, because more often than not, the perpetrators of violence have been victims, and so.
I'm from the generation of, drinking 40, smoking blunts, right? And we used to pour out the liquor and had no idea that was tied back to Yoruba, cultural practices, right? And me and Damati was talking about this too when we were having this conversation around this. For those of you who don't know, when somebody kills somebody they're into it with, they smoke what they call an op pack. And it's a ritual of naming your drug of choice after the people that you killed, And we got to think about the psychology behind that. What does that culture say when you are almost literally taking in like this physical manifestation of the person that you just harmed? Mm-hmm. So it's not a tribute to them, right? You're not honoring them. It's the ultimate form of disrespect, So thinking about just the culture, the language, and again, this isn't something unique to millennials. We can look at, the harm from the 90s, the 80s, to back to the 30s and the 20s. I mean, it's sort of history repeating itself. Charles mentioned earlier, about, what the Panthers, the Vice Lords, the gangsters, the Disciples, the Stones, what they were doing in the 60s and 70s. They went through a transformation. They were 10,000 strong in these streets on the South and West Sides, banging, fighting each other every day. But they came to, they got politicized, fortunately, and the conditions changed somewhat that they started organizing and transforming themselves. So I guess the question for me is, how do we sort of get into the culture that young people are sort of immersed in, along with the trauma, along with the conditions, the poverty, et cetera, and how do we begin to sort of shape that? How do we create that rites of passage? How do we give them a new way of viewing themselves? And I think the other thing I just kind of want to touch on too is the toxic masculinity, right? Is, how do we define manhood? These traditional ways of viewing, you got to be tough, you got to be hard, you got to carry yourself a certain way, and you can't be tested, you can't be no punk, and yada, 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 right? These things are learned behavior, how we define masculinity.
But
so
we just celebrated Thanksgiving, which right under the surface of the food is a celebration of mass horrific violence, you know what I mean? And so like we celebrate violence in ways that are so insidious, so pervasive that it's hard to even bear the weight of what we lost as Black people in this country and around the world. Like it's hard to even like conceive of it. Like the weight of the magnitude of that violence is embedded in our very names. Like every time you say Dr. Cartman, right? We celebrate. I'm worshiping. You know what I'm saying, the violent, most violent folk that, at the planet has seen. And so when I think about what it means for us to reconnect to these practices, these worldviews, rites of passages, the drumming, the dance, the community, we were closer to it before. And I think we're getting further and further away from just Black sins, from African traditions, from knowing what it is that regardless of what somebody else can do, they could, whatever kind of policy they got, whoever's in charge, we should have enough sense in our communities to say this is not for us. Like we got our own stuff, we got to find it, we got to research it, we got to implement it, we got to teach it, we got to share it. Our kids should know it. Every time you have a child, it's a new opportunity for them to have a brand new worldview. But like we miss the opportunity because we're so busy with the old stuff and we worshiping somebody else's stuff. And so for me, the drums are just a basic introduction into reclaiming what they attempted to take.
The thing that bothers me the most, and if it wasn't Kofi who asked us to convene this, I had already vowed years ago. I was like, about a year ago, almost today, I said I'm not doing any more violence panels because I came to a panel and we're talking about violence. Everybody had suits on. Nobody was connected to. Everybody was a suit. Nobody was really in the field. And then when you go outside or after the panel, people rush you and talk to you or whatever like that. There's one kid who was affected by gun violence, and I saw someone overtalk somebody because they were trying to network. These were two businessmen, like, oh, you work at so-and-so? Oh, yeah. And this kid, he was the only person affected by gun violence, pants sagging, dreads, everything. No one was speaking to him. So I went, chopped it up with him, gave him my number, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, People who claim to love the community walk past these people every single day. You walk past them on the street and say, and you clutch your purse on your way to a panel and talk about, we need to fight this community violence. And so I think taking those young people that you engage with, whether it's your little cousin, your nephew, people you bump into on the street, or I bump into at panels. I have so many people who just call my phone and ask for advice, or who say, do you got anything going on? I need to just get out of the area that I'm in. And I'll be like, come on, I'm going to doing an event here, blah, blah, blah. Bring your Uber, I'm gonna pick you up. And I think that those small things, it seems like it's minuscule, but if you could change the life of 2, 3 people in your midst, it's a powerful thing.
Work, I get so frustrated because it's like, I need help to do this work. I've got the vision, I've got the plan, I know what I'm doing. I don't have enough resources to do it properly. And I also understand that I can't be reliant on resources from outside of the community because that's not sustainable.
What are the resources that you need?
Right.
Literally.
Even when you just said it's not about the elders passing on a baton of leadership. Like, we've come into the role of leadership. I didn't ask anybody, I didn't wait for anybody to tell me you can do this. I did it because I didn't see anybody else that was doing it. And I didn't let the fact that I was 16 at the time deter me because there was no one else that was doing it, so I was gonna do it. The people that have relationships with the young people who are most involved need to be empowered through they need a range of resources. What somebody said, sometimes you just need to get out. Like, I've got young people that they're gonna get killed. I'm here in another country and I need resources to send them out of the city for a week or 2 weeks because their life is at risk right now.
A lot of the youth that want to be leaders think they can just come out the womb and be leaders. That go with experience. Your struggle ain't no different than mine. I created urban transformation myself to show individuals what they can do. Show them, well, hey man, you can become a judge if you follow this route, okay? The killing that you're talking about in London is happening here every day in our community. So you got individuals, and what the system does, it convinced the young adults not to listen to the elders that went through what you think you're going through. We done been through it. You feel what I'm saying? So the thing becomes, look, listen, and learn. Don't just apply to the elders.
Yeah, I don't think that's what she's saying, though.
No, that's what she's saying. She's asking for the resources. He asked the question, what are you lacking?
So what tips, based on the fact that you've been able to build these type of things,
right,
what tips do you have for people who have these type of organizations to pour resources for people with money?
The thing is this. I did this with no money. Okay? When you start thinking that you need money, you leave it open for individuals come to give you to misguide you.
Give it away.
Networking. You get network from networking. The one resource that you say you may be looking for, he may have it. The one you're looking for, she may have it. You know, the collectiveness is what's happening. The power that y'all got right on this panel is connectiveness. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. You know what I mean? And the thing is this, man. I'm saying this from experience. Y'all do not have as much time as we had.
And there's no intergenerational dialogue. This is global. Like, we had this panel the other day, and I was thinking, you know, this is exactly the same thing in my country. The elders have experienced all of these things, but you're saying look and listen and understand, but are you forthcoming with the information? I say that because where are the spaces for you to even share this information with young people? Where are those spaces being created? And it's a joint effort for them to be created. You might link with me and I say, okay, I'll bring 30 young people to the room. You bring 3, 4, 5 elders and we'll all share. That takes 2 people to organize that, but both parties need to do it to be in the same space to even have that conversation. It's all good having all of that stuff in your head and then thinking that no one's willing to listen, but how did you try and facilitate to share that information? Because right, the fire, the passion, that's with the youth, the energy, the youth will do the changes. But again, exactly as you said, it's everybody's fight. So it's just what role do you play now later on in life? It might not be the same role you played when you were 20, when you were 30, but now you're 60 or however old you are throughout your life, you can play a different role.